If you were the king, would you cheat on your wife? Well, if you were King Edward VII of England, you absolutely would. And not just on any woman, mind you, but a woman who would become the grandmother of the current Queen Consort Camilla. Hi, I'm your host, and this is another episode in our series of royal mishaps, so grab your tea and biscuits and settle in. King Edward VII had been having an affair for years with Alice Keppel, a married woman considered by many to be the most beautiful woman in England. They first met at a party at the Duchess of Devonshire's house in 1891, and it was love at first sight. Well, maybe not for Alice. At first, she wasn't even that fond of the king, finding him to be rather dull. Edward didn't care. He was besotted, and would follow her around all evening at parties, desperate for her attention. This made Alice's husband, George Keppel, very angry. And when he confronted the king, Edward simply replied that he could untelp it if he found a particular flower in the garden. So the nerve of these royals. Anyway, despite Alice's initial reluctance, she eventually gave in to the advances of the king, and they began a discreet affair since his death in 1910. It was scandalous at the time, of course, but the couple took great pains to keep it under wraps. For one thing, Edward was already married to Queen Alexandra, and even more importantly, he was the uncle of both Mary and Henry, the heir to the throne. Now, while it's true that Edward had had affairs before, and we covered one of them in depth in a previous episode, this one was different. Alice wasn't just some random mistress. She was intelligent, witty, and charming. And unlike Edward's other mistresses, she had no interest in money or status. She knew exactly what she wanted from Edward, and it wasn't jewels or a title. It was his undying devotion.
And she got it.
Edward doted on Alice, showering her with affection and expensive gifts. He even went so far as to have a secret apartment built for her in Windsor Castle, complete with its own entrance and exit so she could come and go without being seen. Talk about dedication. Despite this, their relationship was far from easy. Alice was a free spirit who hated being cooped up inside the castle walls. She much preferred to be out in the world, meeting people and having fun. And she also had a bit of a wild streak in her, if you know what I mean. There were several occasions when she had affairs with other men, even while she was with the king. Edward, of course, was furious about this, but there was nothing he could do. Alice was a modern woman ahead of her time, and she wasn't going to be controlled or manipulated like the women of the Victorian era before her. She knew that she had the upper hand in this relationship, and she was unafraid to use it. In the end, it was probably a good thing that Edward died when he did. If he had lived longer, things could have gotten really ugly. As it was, when he passed away in 1910, his will stipulated that Alice was to receive a generous allowance for life. In exchange, she agreed to give up her claim to the throne, which was a bit tricky because technically she had never had one. However, she was the closest thing that Edward had to a legitimate heir. Since he and Alexandra had no children of their own, and Mary, the heir to the throne, was his niece. Still, it was all very hush-hush, and the details were kept secret for decades. It wasn't until the 1950s that the truth of Alice's relationship with Edward came to light, thanks in part to the publication of a tell-all book by one of Edward's former servants. By that time, of course, Alice was long dead, having died in 1947. But her son, George, was very much alive and was furious about the revelations about his mother. He tried to sue the author of the book, but to no avail. And so the scandal of Alice Keppel became public knowledge once again. These days, she is best known as the grandmother of Camilla Queen Consort, who is married to King Charles III. Yeah, that's right. The King's mistress became the grandmother of the Queen's consort. Talk about a royal twist of fate. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you next time.